Friday, September 23rd at 6:30 in the morning. It's dark outside. I can't see a thing. I'm down here and there's a bang on my door, really loud, and the doorbell's rung like 30 times or something. It just keeps ringing, ringing, ringing. Well, I said, well, who is it? And they said, it's the FBI, bang, 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 again. I said, okay, stay calm. I have 7 babies in here. Please, stay calm. So I open the door and I show my hands as I'm coming out because I knew that would be important. But what I saw was the last thing I would expect to see. There was 15 marked and unmarked units in my property. And I said, what are you doing here? And they said, well, you know why we're here.
I hadn't quite gotten out of bed yet, but I saw some flashing lights on the wall across from my bedroom. We live, very much in the middle of nowhere, so I wasn't expecting that. I immediately start walking towards the door, but before I even got to our bedroom door, I hear pounding and the doorbell ringing.
Unbelievable story. We're going to hear a lot more from this here in today's podcast. Hi, everybody. Welcome on into that podcast. It's called the Check Your Brain Podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. Good to be here with you. Before we get started, before I get to my guest today and talking about everything, my plugs, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. I'm available on Rumble. I'm on YouTube. For now, I'm waiting until the big censorship crackdown we'll probably have at some point this summer. And I'm on the major podcast platforms, so on Apple, Spotify, everything like that. Enough about me. Let's get to my guest right here. And you just saw him there or heard from him, depending on where or how you're listening to the podcast. It is Mark Houck. Mark has run for Congress. He is a pro-life advocate. He's been all over the place. He speaks all over the country and talking about just the trying to dissuade and discourage women from, or just families in general, because it's not just the women who are getting pressured into not just getting abortions, going through the pill. We're going to talk a lot about that, but he's a family man. He's a husband. He's a father of 7. And yeah, that was a crazy story that happened just a couple of years ago where the 3-letter agencies are arresting him and traumatizing his children. We'll hear from all of that. But first, before I get to all of that, hello, Mark. Welcome on into the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Great to be with you, and it's good to be with your audience.
Yeah, so let's, before we get to it, I always like to do the plugs first to start out. So talk about the King's Men.
Yeah, sure. So it's a ministry that I started about 20 years ago in 2004, and it was designed to help men be better men. I was a single guy at the time, and I was trying to be better myself, and it was really an answer to kind of what I saw as a crisis in masculinity that was kind of emerging for me as I worked full time in the pro-life movement. And I saw a failure of men, not only at the abortuaries and men failing women who are seeking abortion, but I saw a tremendous failure in men stepping up and being involved and leading and being a part of this movement. I was speaking on chastity and lecturing teens on their sexuality, and there was a tremendous lack of men, or I should say male involvement in that as well. So I just said, what's going on here? And just took a look at my own life, Tony, and decided that there needed to be somebody or some offering to men to help them be better and to step up and engage the culture, and just grow into what it means to be an authentically Catholic Christian man.
Yeah, that's one thing we have really gotten away from in the, there's a lot of factors to it. We could talk about the 50 plus years, the second, third wave of feminism. You talk about just a regular emasculation against men in general. And of course, promoting, since what we've seen since 1973, and then the no-fault divorce has been a huge one. And it's, I am a 36-year-old man. I'm a millennial, and I just see a lot of people in my generation feel very lost right now. A lot of men. And anytime you bring up male, like any type of masculinity, it's equated with toxic masculinity. There was a whole campaign about 5 years ago with Gillette. Now, Gillette was the best that you can get, and they would have these long-legged blondes shaving their legs, and it's like, what do you think that means? What's that? And then all of a sudden they decide, no, wait, we know who our product is, what our product is, and who we're targeting. So we're targeting the women who are going grocery shopping. And we are now in the Me Too movement where we need to just really kind of get away from this. So they had a whole campaign about toxic masculinity. what is toxic masculinity, and what it came down to is any male who's being unapologetically male. And now it turns into this binary choice. It seems like either you're very Andrew Tate level or you're a beta male. And I'm thinking, there's a little bit of a mix. You can have feelings and also be a proud man, proud masculine male, without having it resort to what they consider to be toxic and what I consider to be very beta.
No, good point. Yeah. Look, toxic masculinity is interesting. You stand up for something and you're toxic, right? You stand up for your kids, you're toxic. You tell the culture that you're not going to engage in something. You're going to opt out of the sex ed education, and now you're a misogynist, emasculated. They're going to emasculate you for doing that. So yeah, man, I'm with you. I agree with you, and frankly, it's not something I really I get caught up in anymore because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, I mean, it came up in the campaign as I was running for Congress. They tried to use that against me, like somehow I'm for traditional male and female roles. I just said, I kind of look to the Bible for my biblical understanding of these things. I said, I'm not for anything that hasn't been espoused for 2000 plus years. I'm just trying to stay true to that, and they try to pigeonhole you in that, and it's sad that that's where we're at in our culture today.
Do you feel there's a little bit of a shift in the post Jack Dorsey Twitter world of where it seems that since the post 2020 that we can finally start having these conversations again, that there's a lot of more of what I guess at one time were uncomfortable conversations, but now you have people that are saying, yeah, you know what, call me whatever you want, I don't care. Because it seemed like it wasn't too long ago, maybe around the 2012 election, where, for example, a candidate or somebody gets called a racist, even if there's absolutely no proof that they have any racist bone in their body, and they all have to come out and apologize, go, I'm sorry, I swear, and they have to do all this. And I'm thinking, now it seems like we're at the point now where people are like, yeah, that doesn't work anymore. That's not sticking like it used to.
Yeah, yeah. I guess as you get older and you get a little wiser and have a little bit of experience in your life, you tend to care less what other people think. I know as a 30-year-old and even 40-year-old, I'll be 50 this year. I still cared what people thought about me. I guess there comes a point in everyone's journey where you just get more comfortable in your own skin. You are who you are. You're content in that, and you're not trying to change for the purpose of others. You're trying to pursue your vocation. You understand your identity. You're comfortable with that identity, and it's a journey though, because it depends on where you find yourself in the culture, whether you're trying to conform to keep your job or trying to conform to a society that wants to uh, make you I guess all tolerant of everything. I guess it's all in with that. But for me, I run my own ministry. I'm kind of rogue like that. I guess it's easier for me to say, but nonetheless, it's not easy for me to say because people use it against me. So I mean, you just have to accept that, not everyone's going to agree with you. And I think that's part of being manly. A part of being manly is just to say, you know what, we don't have to agree. We don't have to agree with each other. We just have to respect each other. And that's the way men, you could get into a fight with a man and clink a beer with him afterwards, because you understand that the man has a right to defend himself. A man has a right to have his own opinions, and that doesn't make him wrong just because he has those opinions. It just makes him who he is. And sadly, our culture with tolerance is really twisted. We need to tolerate those opinions, but that doesn't mean we dismiss those who have different opinions. And sadly, with the pro-abortion and pro-choice movement, that's again, if you're not using their words, then now it's hate speech and they're vilifying you.
Yeah, let's talk about that as we, have now almost, what's it been, about 2 years since the Dobbs decision was reversed. And boy, I gotta tell you, the freak out that was going on at that time from early May when the leak came out from the Supreme Court all the way to, I believe it was June 24th of 2022, that, yeah, no, this is now going to be the law of the land. And I mean, taking away from the political aspect of what it emboldened a lot of people, especially women, going out to the polls in 2022. But I don't really care as much about the politics. It's more about the culture and what are we doing in this culture war. So, talk a little bit about what the FACE Act is for people, because it's not just you. And I have several stories that I can even show up as you're talking about people, especially women. It's not just men. It's not just, again, this angry, toxic, masculine men blocking an abortion clinic. It's women who are getting arrested over this too. And you got caught up in this. And I guess talk a little bit about what the FACE Act is and how it applied to you and why you ended up making not just local news, not just national, but international news.
Yeah, so in 1993, under the Clinton administration, there was a legislative bill put forward, an act, if you will, called the FACE Act, which stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. And it was put forward by Senator Ted Kennedy, and I believe Chuck Schumer was engaged in it. But nonetheless, it was put forward as a mechanism whereby the Clinton administration ultimately would use to stop what was called the rescue movement at that time. Now, freedom of access to clinic entrances, as it was defined on the House floor, was to apply to both pro-life people, people outside the building, and the people who work in the building, the mortuary, if you will. It was supposed to have application for those people and protect both rights. Now, sadly, what happened was it did not really apply to those that were doing sidewalk counseling. In other words, it could not be used against people who were exercising their First Amendment rights. It didn't have application to them. It had application to people who wanted to go to a pregnancy resource center or wanted to do something like that nearby an abortuary. So it was supposed to be this both and. However, it was used very aggressively against pro-life people. It kind of halted the rescue movement back in the early 90s, and then it just kind of disappeared for a little while. And of late, since the Dobbs era changed everything, as you mentioned, Tony, they started bringing it back, and it was now being applied solely, exclusively, with the exception of maybe a rare one or two cases. It was being applied exclusively against pro-life people who were praying and witnessing outside of abortion mills around the country. And I was one of those people caught up in that application. In fact, mine really didn't have much to do with the FACE Act, but because I was outside the building and was against, people going in that building, it was used against me. And we went to court over it, and we could talk about that.
Yeah, what exactly happened at that time? Because, well, like you said, it came out in the 1990s, and you see that the rhetoric has changed so much since the 90s of safe, legal, and rare to now where you have presidential candidates who are up there saying, yeah, point of birth, sure, why not? Why not after point of birth? Why not 5 years old? Where's your cutoff date during this? And we just kind of just shrug our shoulders. Things had changed so much. And because of that, on top of not only just the amount of abortion and access to it, you're also seeing the abortion pill, which is something I don't think a lot of people are talking about, where now it's to the point where it's the majority of abortions that are being taken place are because of the pill. But your ministry and a lot of that, like you said, that sidewalk ministry of being outside, you see it all over Planned Parenthoods, and you see the signs and you see the protesters and the anti-protesters, everything. And it's kind of interesting. But you were there, and you were there with your kids, right?
Yeah, I was taking my son when he turned
Just
12.
just one son. I
Yeah,
didn't know if it was all your kids. Okay.
I've taken them all before, but I was strategically taking my son every Wednesday with me to Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and had taken him to about 30 prayer vigils before we had an incident that occurred in October of 2021, October 13th to be exact. And yeah, it became an issue on a local level. Everything was dismissed. Basically, a abortion escort was harassing my son, badgering him repeatedly, about 50 feet from the entrance to the building. Had nothing to do with anybody walking in and out of the building. It was just him harassing my son and I. And I neutralized the situation, stopped it, as it was an altercation that was minor. It was all dismissed in Philadelphia court. In fact, the guy didn't even show up for court, so it wasn't even that important for him. So, but 5 days later, after that dismissal, which was April 22nd, 2022, this is all the pre Dobbs leaking that Dobbs was going to overturn Roe. I was served a target letter on the sidewalk April 27th of 2022 saying that I was a target of a federal grand jury investigation with potential indictment under the FACE Act, which we just talked about, and have your attorneys contact us right away. And so that's what we did. And of course, my attorney said, you have no case here. There's no application here. There's even case law in your own district against indicting my client. However, should you want to indict him, no need to bring an agent out to his house. He's a peaceful man. We'll bring him to you. Just give us a call and, we'll come down and present him.
So, what I remember the story when it came out, and of course, kind of like in today's society where you have the original story and then eventually what actually happened, and everybody wants to go after the original story, what was originally reported. It made it seem like there were these peaceful protesters putting flowers in the guns like back in the Vietnam days, and it's like, law, we're just here, we're helping, and then here's this mean old Mark Houck is just shoving people out of the way, making it seem way worse than it really was, when in reality, of course, kind of like what we saw with Covington Catholic about 5 years ago, is that no, your kid was being harassed and you just said, get out of the way. And then because of that, because of all these, really, what it comes down to is a political persecution going on now. Then all of a sudden, like it played at the beginning of the podcast, you're having guns drawn at you at your home in front of your family.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an overwhelming show of force and showing a complete bias, a viewpoint perspective that was completely one-sided, totally an agenda driven by the United States Justice Department. So clearly they told the state officials to stand down, which is collusion. You're not allowed to do that. That happened after my dismissal. We realized that because they picked up the case right away. So it's not a coincidence that the DOJ would pick up my case 5 days after it was dismissed. So then Dobbs overturns Roe, and then all of a sudden, all these pro-lifers start getting picked up. Now, nothing happens to us. So when what you allude to happening to me was a complete surprise because they weren't returning our phone calls. We just assumed it was, and they saw that it was truly what you said, just, a man protecting his son, just a shove on the sidewalk in Philadelphia, and no big deal here, and no violation here of FACE Act. So when they banged on my door on September 23rd at 6:30 in the morning, thank God I was awake. I was not expecting that, and the unbelievable show of force, which was 20 plus federal agents and Pennsylvania state troopers, Philadelphia police, and sheriffs at my door with M16 guns pointed at me, my wife, and 7 children, just did not seem logical. Yet, very, very reckless. We still suffer to this day from the effects of that, what that means to us emotionally. Post-traumatic stress is a very real thing that little children deal with, that I deal with, and that is just something that people don't think about. You think, wow, you were taken peacefully away. Yeah, but in the manner in which I was taken and accosted in front of my children in my home was completely tyrannical, and you feel that, and you don't feel like you have safety in your home when something like that happens. You don't feel like you're ever really safe because they could do it again. Sadly, they could do it again, and they wanted to do it again, but we had to take them to court. We had to face down, the government and the full force of the government, which has a 98% conviction rate when they come after you. And we won. Praise be to Jesus Christ, we won. So, but the journey from September 23rd to January 30th was definitely a trying ordeal for all of us.
Yeah, I pulled up right now. If you're watching on the video, I have a Rolling Stone piece, and there's a reason I picked this, because I could have picked Catholic News Organization or agency and everything, but I wanted to get Rolling Stone because of how they word things. So it's anti-abortion activist accused of pushing 72-year-old volunteer found not guilty. And they made it when you go through this whole piece again, it makes it seem like this guy got away with almost murder because he shoved somebody on the property. And again, that's not at all what happened. So they still have to continue pushing it. This is
Yeah.
why what I always talk about with what happens with communism is that they actually don't just change, like topple the statues that we've been seeing around our country the last several years, but they change the language. That some things used to mean one thing. That's why illegal immigrant you can't say anymore. That's racist. That's whatever. It's now newcomer. So they have to change the language. You have to stay up with it, or else you're on the outside the Overton window of public discourse. So that's why I don't use their language anymore by saying we're pro-choice. Really? Well, were you pro-choice 4 years ago when people wanted to, I don't know, get a haircut or go to a restaurant? No, you couldn't choose to do that. You couldn't choose to go into a place without a mask. Couldn't choose a vaccine. Blah blah blah. You just go through the whole thing. So you're not really pro-choice. You're pro-abortion. So that's why I make sure when I talk about these things that I don't fall into their language traps and where I have to say something and they're like, you said this. And like, no, you are pushing us to that level where we're feeling unapologetic of not playing the same game as you anymore.
Right. Yeah, look, it is clear, where they stand, and the culture of death is has been here for a long time, but they're getting more and more brazen, more and more bold. And if the Joe Biden regime, as I've been saying, gets reelected, we're in for more of it. And sadly, out of all the people that have been prosecuted, I'm the only one that essentially was acquitted of the big. There was some smaller ones, smaller misdemeanor ones that have been handled and pled down. However, the big ones, the ones that are facing 11 years in prison, I was the only one that was acquitted. So there's more attacks coming, and sadly, there's 70 plus, 88 year old Mrs. Edel, Ava Edel, I think her name is concentration camp survivors. She thinks she's going to die in prison, and there she is, she's now in prison as a result of her pro-life work. So, it's sad that we have this reality, but martyrdom is coming for all of us. And as I've been telling, and as I shared with your audience when I first met you, it was a white martyrdom that I was saying yes to. But on the day of my raid, it very easily could have been a red martyrdom, if cooler heads and the peace that was in my home did not prevail. But very sad, people are in danger as a result of these things.
Yeah, this is a truly an example of a political persecution from what we're seeing right now currently as we recorded this with what's happening with President Trump in court over flimsy, basically misfiling a document or whatever. It had nothing, regardless of Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal or anything. You're talking about a filing error, and they want to put him in prison for 700 years over stuff like that. And then of course all the J6 people who weren't even on the grounds at the Capitol, and then who are getting 20 years because they were associated with somebody. Yet there are people like Ray Epps that are able to basically get even less than a slap on the hands or a slap on the wrist. You are seeing these examples being made of people who are now political prisoners. And if you're somebody who is pro-life, if you're somebody who is pro, I don't know, think the 2020 election had a little bit of funny business going on. Again, here I'm going to get kicked off of YouTube. Doesn't matter. I care about principles. That they're going after you. That this isn't a case of, well, we live in a free country and freedom of speech, First Amendment. No, they are literally going after people because you disobey what the regime is trying to push. And the fact that some people still believe in almost June of 2024 that this is a conspiracy theory, you're living under a rock.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're not paying attention. And and I think people think, it's not as bad as we're making it sound here, but it is bad. And our Constitution, our republic is in major jeopardy. We are on the verge of losing this republic, which John Adams said we'd only have about 300 years anyway, that he gave it 300 years. So, we're at the point now where like we're imploding like Rome did. and the degradation and the depravity that it destroyed Rome is now destroying us. We're turning in on ourselves. Women are becoming their own abortionists with the abortion pill that you mentioned earlier. And of course, the sexual hypersexualized culture is maybe worse than what was on display in Rome, with what they had going on. But that said, we need to shine like beacons here in the midst of this darkness, and we need to proclaim who we are, and know that there are good people in this country that still believe in the founding fathers' dream for this nation, and there's hope. That's one of the reasons why I ran for Congress, is just to give people hope, knowing that we probably wouldn't win, which we didn't. But we needed to do it regardless. Sometimes your message is more important than what the results are. And just like your podcast, it's important to get the message out.
I wanted to talk more about when we're mentioning about abortion and the abortion pill. And I'm a Catholic, so I've always been, I guess, what you would consider pro-life. But also, there was a time you get into your 20s where I think a 20-year-old male goes through his libertarian phase. It's just a matter of how long until you finally grow out of it. And I was in a libertarian phase of kind of buying a little bit of the rhetoric around abortion, where you're like, well, in the cases of rape and incest, I understand that, to the point where they're bringing it up at presidential debates. Until you start really looking into who's getting the abortion, why it's happening, and you realize this gray area that we almost think that it's making up for half is a fraction of a percentage of what happens. That it's upwards of, I could be wrong, Mark, you could correct me, 92, 93% of abortions are just out of convenience. I didn't feel like it. I cheated on my husband. My husband pressured me into getting one. We didn't want to have another kid, or we're not ready yet. And it's all these other factors. And of course, anytime you bring it up, you're told, well, you shouldn't tell a woman what to do with her body, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. But I think more people are waking up to realizing that it's not just, oh, situations end up happening. It's way worse than we could have even imagined. And especially with this pill that's out, that with the availability, the access that you can get it at a CVS or a Walgreens is so disturbing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and your numbers are right, and it's sad that that this is our view on life and life in the womb, and again, it is a sad reality. But this isn't the first time that abortion has come around and been defeated. I mean, this is like the third time around, as the book by George Grant, I think his name is, wrote it the third time around. Like, saints are raised up in times of great depravity, and saints will be raised up in this time. And so, yeah, they're changing their game, and they're bringing the abortion now into the living room and into the bedrooms of women who are becoming their own abortionists. And it's very sad, it's extremely dangerous. And now we have to get creative as a pro-life movement and how we combat that. A lot of us are protesting CVS's and various places like that, to let people know that they're selling these things, because a lot of people don't know. But it's definitely a scary reality. We were always sharing abortionpillreversal.com at the abortion mills, letting women know that they have 24 to 36 hours to save their baby. I mean, a lot of women, they walk out with that pill and they took the first dose in the facility, and they think, oh, okay, everything's good. Well, no, that baby's still clinging to life. That baby can still survive. And I always tell them when they walk out, name your child. I know that's hard to hear, but I said, name your child, and then you got 24 to 36 hours if you want to save that child, if you change your mind, if you have any regrets. So it's hard. Those are hard realities. But yeah, like you said, convenience is the major reason why the Supreme Court kind of ruled that in 92, that Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that it's birth control, essentially. So but Supreme Court got it right this time, and now we have a new battle, which is just really beginning. Once Roe was turned over, it wasn't like, oh, okay, we won. Now it's like, okay, game on. It's nothing changed in the state of Pennsylvania where I lived. Dobbs didn't change anything here. we have abortion all the way up to 24 weeks. And so it didn't change anything for us. So we have to continue to work at the state level to change these laws and protect life in each state.
At the risk of alienating even more of my baby boomer audience, it seemed like a lot of that rhetoric that came out of the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s about safe, legal, and rare. You shouldn't judge a woman based on what ends up happening. And yeah, like you said, birth control, the pill, the abortion, it's all the same thing. You're just trying to control birth. And then I remembered in the 90s when there were a lot of these pro-life the PSAs that were on television that you were hearing from people talk about, oh, well, it's just a clump of cells. It's a congealed clump of cells. It's not a big deal. Whatever it is, it can't think for itself. It can't talk. There's a Bill Hicks joke where he says, you're not a human until you're in my phone book, which is amusing, but it's also pretty demonic. How has that message changed since then? Are younger generations understanding? Are they seeing the photos and the videos, the images that are going on with these? Are younger people waking up a little bit more to this, or the Zoomer generation, I guess, or is it an even bigger fight because of the online blowback a lot of this gets?
Yeah, I mean the rhetoric that it's a clump of cells, or that life in the womb is not a life. That's been refuted, and really people don't use that anymore. It's not even, they know it. They know it's a baby. They know it's a human life on both sides. That we don't have to explain that anymore. We do have to show them that it's a life. We do have to show them the fingernails and the heartbeat and all that stuff. And that's why we have those wonderful bills like the heartbeat bill coming forward. But no, they don't buy that anymore. They're not buying that. It's not a life. They know it. There's so much medicine and technology that has, through the fetal medicine, that we can see life in the womb. And so that's not anything that people are using anymore. The younger generation, again, it's just a matter of my body, my choice. My
Hmm.
body, my choice. It's not, is it a baby? It's my body, my choice. And so that's what I see. Like, don't tell me what to do. I'll kill my baby if I want to. And right now I want to. And when you talk to them in that grisly way, they're aware of it. They'd say it. I'd say, well, what about adoption? I said, I'll adopt your baby for you. I'll even parent your child till you're ready to parent the child, and I'll give the child back to you, and we'll draw up all the papers. And they'd say, I'd rather kill my baby than give the baby up for adoption. And that is unbelievable thought that is in the mind of this generation. Very selfish. It's a narcissistic culture. It's one that is always me first, not the other. And so whether it's, whatever generation you call them, it's navel gazing at its worst, right? Looking at what is important to me versus what God has allowed to happen. And there's no question that God wants to bless these women and these men with human life, and help them with their life and get their lives in order. In so many ways, the child can mature a human being and help them not continue down the path they're going. And the baby can be a life changer for those people if they would just but allow it, and allow grace to flow into their life. But no, they want to control that too, and they become their own god, and they become their own abortionist, and it's on their terms. And sadly, this is exactly what's been going on since the garden. So we got to continue to pray and witness and hope. And most times we're there, we don't save lives, but we keep going, knowing that just one life is all that we're concerned about.
Another thing I was shocked about as I was doing research in the last couple of years since this decision came down is about birth control. And the fact that there are women who are on birth control for 20 something years. I mean, this is not what I don't think it was designed to be on for decades. It was on maybe you went on it during college or whatever. Or now the big one is you put girls on birth control at like 12, 13. They say, no, it's good for your acne. Oh, okay. Then they're finding out that birth control is masking a lot of issues, a lot of health issues in women, and to the point where there's plenty of, I think I saw somewhere along the lines of maybe 25% of women nowadays could possibly be infertile. And because they didn't realize it, they're like, okay, now I'm going to get off the pill. I'm going to start trying. And you realize, oh, I've been masking all these health issues for so many years. I don't
Right.
know what's going on. So I would assume a lot of your ministry isn't just talking about the abortion and the pill, but also that the other pill, the birth control pill. Uh, Talk a little bit about that. And I also wanted to hear your thoughts on a recent controversy that's popped up about IVF and surrogacy.
Hmm. Yeah, I used to talk a lot about, in fact, I go into schools and I bring in the birth control, side effects. I read it to the girls and the men, and I'd read the side effects of the pill, gallbladder, cancer, heart attack, stroke, death. Yeah, you read all this stuff and it's not something they want to hear, but it's important to share it. So all those things are true, cervical cancer, excuse me, breast cancer being linked very much so to the pill. But yeah, there's and even cervical cancer, as I was saying. But look, there's a reality there that people just don't want to face. There's a reality that people don't want to face and deal with that, and that it's not good medicine. And like you said, it masks major problems. And we have natural family planning for couples that need to space pregnancies. We don't need to use birth control to do that, and it's a better odds that you'll not have a baby using those methods than with the pill. The pill fails even more than that. But we have about 95 to 98% of fertile Catholic couples sometimes using these devices. And I don't know where that rhetoric comes from or how they've believed that or bought into that lie, but that's the culture. And sadly, they don't know the truth. Now, you bring up IVF and surrogacy, and gosh, those are hard decisions. And obviously, those are things that, my faith and your faith would tell us are wrong. We don't produce life outside of the creative act that God designed, and that's called the marital act for a man and a woman in the marital embrace in the institution of marriage, sacrament of marriage. But yeah, IVF, people argue like, well, yeah, we want a baby. Like, well, I'm sorry, that's a cross, right? That's not the way you do it. And how many babies are killed in the process of making your baby? And that's the reality of it. How many babies are killed in that process? And then you talk about surrogacy. Again, you're taking that life outside of its proper context. You cannot do that without causing major harm to the dignity of the human person.
You bought a
Really.
baby. You rented a womb and you bought a baby. And now that relationship, the mother that raised this child for 9 months, and then all of a sudden you have a couple that comes in, possibly of alternative lifestyles, that takes it away and doesn't really have a relationship with the mother anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're the slippery slope. I mean, it just continues to go down. Like same-sex couples now, that's their viability. That's where they're going to get a baby. That's where, they're going to create life, and it's just wrong. And the church has to be strong on that and to speak clearly and say that this is wrong, and the church has. But people don't want to hear it. People want to hear this is what's right for me. This is moral relativism, which St. John Paul II warned us against. Ethical relativism, where what's right for me is right for me, and don't tell me. And who are you to tell me I can't have a child? It's just like, wait a second. Marriage is for children. That's where kids are made. Outside of marriage, that's not where kids are made. I'm sorry. And if you don't want to have kids, you shouldn't get married. And these are harsh realities that, so many selfish people today, they want to do what they want to do and they want to do it on their terms. And again, this is to the destruction of the human family. And that's what we're dealing with. And that's all part of this. And those are hard things to talk about. Those are hard things to hear. But I'm thankful you're bringing them up because, there's a lot of Catholics that buy into this stuff, a lot of Christians that buy into this stuff.
I do feel that there is a pretty anti-human element that's been going on, not just talking about the promotion of abortion, the pill and birth control and everything, but of course with the as we're here in June now, the transgender movement and Pride Month and
Mm.
the promotion of puberty blockers and hormone blockers and uh, here I'm using their language again, gender affirmation, of course. And a lot on top of that, and then also saying you don't have to have kids. There's all these other factors, and it just seems to me that there is such an anti-human, anti-family, especially nuclear family element that's being pushed in our culture. And I guess to use the online terminology now, the white pill is the people who are promoting this ideology. I mean, they'll be dying off and they're not having any offspring, and the people who are the ones who have the families and are raising them with faith. But we're going to have to wait a generation, maybe several decades, for that to really blossom. But I don't know. It just seems that there's such an anti-family element that we've been pushing in this culture, and it's an ongoing fight for us.
Yeah, and it's the final battle, right? It's the final battle, and the human family is going to remain intact when we have authentic witnesses to what a human family looks like. And so we need to be witnesses to that. We need to be witnesses to broken people, fallible people who are striving for holiness in their marriage and trying to follow God's laws and obey them and deal with the consequences of the reality that life is hard, that there's suffering and there are crosses to bear that we don't always want to bear. And even though we have great technology and when we look at faith, science is a part of, we can use science for great good. We can use medicine for great good. We can also use it for great evil. And so, unfortunately, the ends doesn't justify the means. And so in this culture, that's what we're dealing with is those realities that people need to face and say, no, this is not good. I think when you interview the people who have undergone the human or the hormone therapy, and those that have failed in that journey, they would tell you that it was bad, that it was a bad experience, that they bought into a bunch of lies, and it's not true. I've heard these testimonies, and it's really horrific to hear the gender dysphoria and how it's being pushed upon children who don't really know any different, and they're just listening to adults who are telling them one thing, and not allowing them to grow and evolve into the person God created them to be. It's child abuse at its worst. And it's really dangerous that people need to wake up, and we need to fight for these laws at the school board level and in our communities, because we are going to destroy a generation if we don't speak up. And we need people who understand these things to speak to them, and we need to have testimonies of people who have experienced these lies, and they're the fallout of that. So we got a big mountain to climb here, brother.
Last thing I wanted to ask you, Mark, is,
Sure.
is that you're a Catholic. I'm a Catholic too, and I went to Catholic school growing up, all of that, and made all the sacraments, everything. And I got older, I realized a lot of my friends were abandoning their faith, either just not going to church or just being the C&E, the Christmas and Easter Catholics, or they just wouldn't go at all, or they became atheist, agnostic, whatever the case. And then 2020 hits. And it was the year I got married, and we still ended up having our wedding in June of 2020. However, I started noticing a lot of how the Catholic Church was not. I was very disappointed in their actions, that we couldn't have Easter, and when they did reopen, that you were seeing images of super soakers for baptism, that they were squirting the babies from 6 feet away for social distancing. I just thought the Catholic Church, or a lot of churches, really dropped the ball as far as the COVID stuff, as far as a lot of the cultural elements that were going on, the BLM stuff. And then now you have a pope and a lot of Jesuits who are promoting some stuff that is kind of goes against a lot of what we believe in as a people. However, I do notice that, again, the boomer Catholics and the boomer Catholic churches in the suburbs, they seem to be a lot more, hey, with the post-Vatican II, we need to have more guitars and more choirs and everything. And it seems that there might be a generation that's coming up that is embracing tradition a little bit more. I go to a traditional Latin Mass now. I returned to the church after a couple of year absence, unfortunately, and I realized it wasn't so much that I abandoned the faith and that the church has failed me, is that I needed to embrace a little bit more of the traditional aspect of it. Now I go to a traditional Latin Mass, if I can find one nowadays, if they're not being outlawed, I can barely get in the door. As opposed to, again, some of the other suburban churches where you donate a couple of bucks and it's okay. So where do you see the Catholic Church, the attacks from the outside, the attacks, it seems, from the inside? How do you feel about the future of it? Are you optimistic going forward that it's going to possibly attract more of the younger generations? Or is this once again another fight we're going to have to deal with in the next couple of decades?
Yeah, look, the church has undergone, tremendous persecution, suffering, way worse than 2020, way worse than 2024. And the gates of hell will not prevail against her. So, look, just look at the 11th century, really bad popes. I think we had like 33 popes in that whole century. Look, there's been a lot of, bad leadership, and the church is made up of fallible people and imperfect people. The Pope is one of them. And while I don't always agree with how he articulates everything, he is still our Pope, and he is still the vicar of Christ here on earth, and we have to uh try to understand his perspective and try to understand why. It's incumbent upon us to make that effort, not to reject him, but to make that effort to understand. Now, obviously, there's always confusion, and he doesn't speak English, and so there's always going to be translational errors, and so a lot of us can take that stuff and we can run with it, and we can pigeonhole ourselves and say, hey, he's against us, or hey, he's against this and stuff. I'm not one that's going to side on that side of things, and I see that there's a beauty in Holy Mother Church, and that even though some people may be leaving the church and going more to the traditional route, or just leaving and becoming evangelical. I can't speak to what the reasons are there. I think it has to do with our own concupiscence more than anything, and our inability to be humble, and accept our own sinful nature. But that said, you bring up the question, or is the church going to rally? Of course, the church will rally. Pope Benedict prophesied that the church would become smaller, and that it would get so small that eventually it would burst into this new springtime for the church. And so maybe we're in the midst of that, where the church is getting a little smaller. We do have still 2 billion Catholics in the world, so it's a big church. There's a lot of us out there, and there's room for all of us. And I'm not really answering your question, but I don't look. I'm as John the 23rd would say. He'd close each night, St. John the 23rd. He'd say, "Look, Lord, I've done the best you can. I've done the best I can. It's your church. You got to take over here. Like, we can only do the best we can, and with our limited understanding of what's going on in the Vatican, our limited understanding of what's going on within the priesthood, we try to understand as best we can. And I think if we as Catholics took that approach, not only would we find beauty in the traditional Latin Mass, but we'd also see beauty in the Novus Ordo Mass, and we'd see that, okay, although it's not the reverential kind of experience that I see in the Latin Mass, Jesus is still present in the Holy Sacrament of the altar, and there's still grace there for me. Even though the homily might suck, there's still grace there for me. I'm there not to get a good homily. I'm there to receive grace, and I'm there to be at Calvary. And I think if we start understanding that, whether you're at a Novus Ordo Mass or a traditional Latin Mass, a Trinity Mass, you're at Calvary regardless, and you're there at the unbloody representation of Christ on the cross. And I think if we get back to that, it doesn't gonna matter. It's not going to matter where you find yourself in the Holy Roman Catholic Church, or even the Eastern part of the church. It's still the same sacrifice, and we all need to go to it. And so that's where I'm at. I love the Latin Mass, but for me, I'm a Novus Ordo guy. Always have been. Fine, it's fine where I'm most comfortable. But that doesn't mean that you're more right than me. It's just your preference spiritually, and so that's where I'm at. So hopefully that helps.
Would you be in favor of a third Vatican Council?
I would not.
No, you wouldn't want one where we, instead of having it an ecumenical, we kick the Protestants out. This
Yeah,
time
you know what? I mean, look, those are rare, right? Those councils are rare, and
I'm being facetious here
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
the
No,
audience.
look. I mean, the church will be fine. And look, your biggest concern is in the four walls of your home. That's your biggest concern. Outside of what's going on in Rome. You need to be concerned of what's coming into your home, especially as you raise your family. And again, with this FBI and weaponized government, we all need to be a little bit more vigilant and more prayerful. So, thanks, Tony, for the time to share today.
Absolutely. And once again, my guest is Mark Houck today. And I want to promote the King's Men and anything else you want to promote here, any speaking engagements, anything else you have going on. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. Now they can check out the website for some of our programs. But no, grateful. Got a lot of speaking coming up in the fall. Summer's usually light, but we'll be traveling, doing some pro-life banquets like we've been doing where we met the first time, and so a lot of that coming up in the fall. So stay tuned, and people can always reach out through my contact information on that website.
Oh, I had one question. It doesn't really fit at the end of the podcast here because I should have asked it and I had it written down on notes and I misread it. But it's amazing, when we get to talk about faith and everything, and the people who are trying to arrest you and throw you behind bars are also the same people who apparently share your faith. It's like when Joe Biden goes up there and says, "Hey, I'm a Catholic. I went to church back in the day," and you're like, "Yet you're arresting Catholics. You, Nancy Pelosi, I think Anthony Fauci is one of them as well." And I'm like, boy, you're really not doing a good job for us Catholics over here. But I believe you are, though, and I think you are doing a phenomenal job, phenomenal mission. I can't wait to post this and
Great.
and get some feedback from people. And Mark, good luck on the journey and everything. Good luck on
Thanks.
the mission and everything. And I'm happy you're out. And good luck to the rest of the family too. That it's going to again, it's going to be you're going to have to deal with this trauma for a bit, unfortunately, but it's just going to make you stronger on this on the outside.
Amen to that. Yeah, we're suing the government now, so keep that in prayer. But yeah, we got a lot to pray for, a lot of leaders to pray for. But I'll pray for you, you pray for me, and happy to join you another time in the future. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to the Check Your Brain podcast. I'll be back with you with another free episode on the major podcast platforms as well as Rumble coming up next Wednesday. If you want more content from me, go over to patreon.com/Tony Mazur, TonyMazur. And for $3, $5, and $10 a month, depending on the tier, you get extra podcast, video, all that fun stuff here on the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Check Your Brain podcast, and have yourselves a wonderful week. I'll be back with you next week. Bye now.